Angela. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for the invitation, Angela and Lori from the San Francisco Public Library to join with you and the participants. Participants, thank you for being here today on this lovely afternoon, and I'm thrilled to offer this presentation to you because I'm a passionate educator myself. I'm third generation here in San Francisco and primarily in the North Beach area where I still call home. And my mother and father going to John Nehal Chin and Gene Parker Francisco Middle School and Galileo High School, where the DiMaggio brothers played baseball. And yesterday I was there teaching physics and being part of the leadership team with Galileo High School. My passion from education comes because I had the good fortune. We moved from San Francisco, like many families did in the 1950s, to because jobs were moving down to the peninsula, and so I had the good fortune of going to high school at Cupertino and graduated in 1972 with Steve Jobs and Mark Wozniak, who are the founders of Apple Computers. And the reason why we we learned so much about science and mathematics was because we had outstanding teachers and we had a lot of support. Sputnik was going on at the time, and we wanted to see who could put the first person on the moon between the Russians and the United States. And so there was all kinds of resources and learning calculus and algebra and geometry at a young age, critical thinking. And so Jobs, Woz, and I kind of took a left turn instead of a right turn into NASA. Those two went into technology, and I went into education. But our intersection was our love for learning and our love for sharing with others. And so when Jobs called me up, when Steve called me up and said, "How can we say thank you for our teachers for helping us create Apple computers and having the skills and knowledge to do this?" I said, I think it'd be a great gesture to have a desktop computer, because at that time they had those big, clunky desktop computers. What if you donate a desktop computer to every school, public school in California, to say thank you? And I don't know, some of you maybe remember that. I certainly remember it. And so Apple Computers did just that, and they donated that for the for saying thank you. And that's why the campus is in Cupertino, because Homestead High School is in Cupertino as well. It wasn't by accident, but they wanted to honor where they learned and their teachers and that. So I share this story with you because I think one of the great benefits is the gratification that you get from being an educator, and it goes beyond certainly the economic compensation, but the great benefit of sharing with the next generation and the intergenerational aspect of that. And last night I was at a PTA meeting where at Sanchez Elementary School with mothers and fathers. I was a principal at Sanchez Elementary School for 13 years. And just hearing the stories of the mothers and fathers and how much education means to them. And we did a big greening project there. In other words, tearing out asphalt and taking out some of the bungalows and creating green spaces outdoors. A day like today, you could imagine children going outside and planting herbs or lettuce and enjoying themselves in the soil and doing all of that and being outdoors, as opposed to being in an apartment, because a lot of our families in San Francisco live in apartments with two or three families. So it's very difficult. And to be outdoors like that is much healthier for many reasons. So we created those spaces, and the families just appreciate that so much because a lot of them don't have access to the land. And so how I got into education was I graduated, like I said, from Homestead High School, and I earned a scholarship to play soccer. And I was really interested more in playing soccer than studying at the time. I really wanted to be the best soccer player I could be. And we're fortunate in the United States here because athletics, I've been working at the high school level most recently at Burton High School, Galileo High School, like I said, where I was yesterday. Galileo was playing Lowell in baseball, that there's girls and boys sports and athletics programs. And my family is Italian, so that's that's why I love being in the North Beach area, because my grandparents came from Italy and settled into the North Beach area. And so I've been working on a project with Italian educators, and in Europe they typically separate the athletics is more private, and it's a more classical education, where the academics at the high school are it's academic, and if you want to play sports, um, basketball, soccer, whatever sport you want to play, it's all private, and so there's no connection of being connected to a pride in the team and stadiums and things like that. And I think we're really fortunate here in the United States that we have that. And I mentioned that because my interest in education came from while playing soccer, I wanted to coach soccer because I loved it so much. So I started coaching youth, and through coaching youth, I found out that I really had a talent for working with young people, and I got a great deal of satisfaction out of that. So my entryway into working with youth was through athletics, for my passion for athletics. And then from that, I started looking at different possibilities of how I can continue my education, and going into education. And so I went in an international studies program in Mexico, and I started teaching in an orphanage in Morelia, Michoacan. And the reason why I did that was because I grew up speaking Italian. And as I said, my father went to Gene Parker Elementary School, but at that time, in the 1920s and 30s, you weren't allowed to speak a language other than English in the school. And it was pretty disrespectful, and my father didn't feel valued and validated. And he ended up dropping out of Francisco Middle School. And I went to a conference last week, the California Association for Bilingual Education conference. And right at Gene Parker Elementary School, Kenny Lau and his mother, who is from Hong Kong, they said, "This isn't right. We should be able to speak Cantonese and Mandarin in our school." And the first grade teacher took that up and said, "Yeah, that's right. Equal treatment doesn't constitute equal opportunity." And it became a Supreme Court decision, the Lau versus Nichols Supreme Court decision, that you need to teach in a language that students understand to make it equal opportunity. And so I've been really interested in going into based on my father's experience of dropping out of Francisco Middle School in eighth grade. He just didn't feel valued or respected with his ancestral language. And that was the story of many people at that time. And so he was fortunate that at that time there were a lot of opportunities, that you didn't have to have a high school or a college education to really have a career pathway. But there was an opportunity for him, and he had a very good livelihood at the time. But it really made me sensitive to this opportunity of multilingual, multicultural education to open up doors. And at Gene Parker Elementary School, this was the origin of this, in San Francisco, of this Supreme Court decision called Lau versus Nichols, that still stands today and kind of leads a pathway that of this idea of equal educational opportunity through multilingual education. And so I encourage you to consider different different opportunities. And volunteering in schools is a great way to do it. When I was doing my undergraduate work, there was a program called Community Actions for Volunteers in Education. And I love gardening as well because my grandparents loved to garden. So I started volunteering in schools and helping them learn about science and germination and that as well. And and so I would encourage you to kind of, depending where you are on this exploring career pathways through education while serving your community, it could serve you to better understand your community, and at the same time opening up possibilities of where you feel like you could fit in education. And this is kind of a really important time in education because I think there's a lot of possibilities for jobs and for different different possibilities of career entry as a paraprofessional. There's needs for a lot of paraprofessionals, which require 2-year degrees, or you could have a 4-year degree. And then there's also opportunities. When I was the principal at Sanchez Elementary School, there were some paraprofessionals that then moved up the career ladder and moved into certificated positions where they're working towards their teaching credentials. And so there's different career pathways that you can look at. Also, if you're into social, emotional aspects of the whole person, like counseling or social work, things like that, there's different possibilities of working in the schools in as well. And there's been different mental health programs that where you could be a paraprofessional or you could be a certificated person. It depends. There's entry level positions of different types. And I would really encourage you to look and go online and look and see about volunteering. There's the San Francisco School Volunteers, there's the Education Fund. And typically, what you need to do, you could volunteer in the San Francisco Public Libraries. Spark is the district's nonprofit program for volunteering in the schools. And typically, you have to have a TB test. There's fingerprinting, and I would encourage you to look at volunteering at a school close to your home. That's the other advantage of this in your community, and it gives you an opportunity maybe to better to know your community by getting to know families and people with at a school, because the school is such a hub for the community that I think it gives you an opportunity to understand understand your community better. The other is, there's aspects of special education and with students with learning disability, with autism, with auditory disabilities, and so visual impairment. So maybe a lot of times people have had family members that they know and they're sensitive to that because of their own life experiences. And so to tap in to that compassion and that area of interest because of your own life experiences. So, and there's paraprofessionals. Yesterday at Galileo High School, for example, I was teaching physics, and there was a student with special needs who needed help focusing on the assignment. So there was a one-on-one paraprofessional that was with him to help him focus and get his assignments done. And it was very effective. It was very effective. So there's different career possibilities if you're interested in that as well. Then going in, early childhood education is another aspect. We're fortunate in San Francisco that the voters have been very generous in terms of providing a half day of early childhood education for every 4-year-old. And with that, there's a lot of opportunities if you're interested in working with younger students, and there's a lot of research that points to the interventions at a young age really show tremendous benefits in the long term. Head Start's done a lot of research in that area, and part of my doctoral degree in education was related to that as well. So when I was the principal at Sanchez School, we had a very strong emphasis on early childhood education and starting as early as possible. My teaching credential, I have a bilingual cross-cultural teaching credential with English and Spanish, and I'm also fluent in Italian. That's my ancestral language. So, and I've studied Mandarin. Unfortunately, in San Francisco, trying to use Mandarin was a little challenging because most of the people here speak Cantonese, but I still really enjoyed learning and understanding the characters of Mandarin and the understanding of the use of the language and from a non-Western language. It was very fascinating, and I really enjoyed that. Um, but I do have a bilingual cross-cultural teaching credential. I've taught at the preschool through university level. I was teaching while I was the principal at Sanchez School. I earned my doctoral degree in international and multicultural education from the University of San Francisco, and they asked me to teach in the teacher preparation program. So I taught in the teacher preparation program and supervised student teachers, and some of them I hired at Sanchez School. And so I wrote a book about it with a colleague from the University of Toronto because I was sharing with Lori that I studied at the University of Toronto. But the book is entitled Transforming Sanchez School: Shared Leadership, Equity, and Evidence. And that book is available through the San Francisco Public Libraries. They bought copies of the book. So if you would like to check out the book, and it's really a book that if you're interested in, say, the visual and performing arts, you could go to chapter 8, and that was co-written by a colleague that had an emphasis on the visual and performing arts. If you're interested in chapter 6 on early childhood education, then you could really look, and that was co-written by a USF professor in the education department. Or teacher education, if you're in education and you're considering going into administration and becoming a principal and getting an administrative credential. Like I hired a teacher in 2012, a third and fourth grade bilingual teacher, and I went to visit him this last week at Marshall Elementary School at 16th and Mission, and now he's the principal. And I coached him and mentored him, to become an administrator. So there's these different career ladders within education that I think are really fascinating. You could go from a paraprofessional into a certificated teaching position. Naturally, you're earning more money because it's a career ladder. There's more responsibility and there's more education required. Or you could go from a classroom teaching position into an assistant principal or a principal position. Right now, I'm supporting 2 assistant principals, one at Galileo High School, and another one is a teacher at Flynn who are working on their doctoral degrees from San Francisco State. And I think both of them are aspiring to move into different administrative positions in education. And I'm mentoring them and encouraging them. And it's really gratifying to be able to serve in that capacity. And then from early childhood education, I taught at the elementary school level. I've taught at the middle school level. I was teaching English as a second language there. And then most recently, last year, I was at Burton High School over on the close to Bayview, Hunters Point, and close to Daly City, and Balboa High School. And most recently, I've been at Galileo High School, where my mother went to high school there. And I've been really pleased with the different departments that they have. If you're interested in coaching, like I was interested in coaching, There's some really strong athletic programs. And a few years ago, Balboa High School won the state championship in football. And I was helping and working in the counseling department. And naturally, there were a lot of universities and colleges that were interested in recruiting some of these athletes. And so they needed to maintain high grades. And there's always that balance between academics and athletics. But I think this is something that the United States and San Francisco really excels in for for girls and boys. And I noticed at the last year at Burton High School with the Valkyries just starting that there's really been, and they've had sold out games for the Valkyries, that it's really been a positive motivation for young girls to be able to have those opportunities. And in speaking, to my wife, who was a professor at Mills College, she said she didn't really have those opportunities to play in team sports, and she thought she really missed out on that opportunity. So it's really nice. And my nephew's daughter is playing volleyball and really benefiting from that. And just those opportunities. Some of my best friends have been uh, guys that I played soccer with at Homestead High School when we won the championship there. We were 10-0, and so that was. But there, you build really strong friendships and relationships through those kinds of out of the classroom experiences. And I really believe in that, that learning takes place in the classroom, but it takes place in other places as well, on the athletic fields, looking at the campus as an opportunity for gardening and transforming it into really interesting learning environments, creating mosaics and artwork. So there's a lot of different ways to learn if you're interested in the arts, that there's a lot of arts opportunities as well in the schools. And I know that, like the San Francisco Public Library system, that the voters also voted that there's librarians. Some of the teachers I had became school librarians so that they teach in the libraries. Each school has a .5 librarian, so they might have to work at two schools to have a full-time job. But there's that idea of the importance of librarians, not only in the public library system, but also within the schools themselves. And most of them have been teachers already. In fact, the teacher that I had at Sanchez School, kindergarten teacher, he oversees the San Francisco Unified School District Library Program, Brad Williston, right now. And we had a strong relationship when I was at Sanchez School with the Eureka Valley Library. And the librarian would come to the school, our librarian would go there, just about a half a block up 16th Street um, from Sanchez School. So there's a lot of possibilities of opportunities in education to be involved. And like I said, I think it's really important to start kind of have a concentric circle in your own community and look to see where there's elementary schools, early childhood education, to look at maybe a middle school or a high school, and go through different organizations. Like there's the volunteers volunteering, like the San Francisco Ed Fund, the Spark program, and all of these have certain procedures you have to go through for the safety and well-being of the students and the school community. But and like I said, that's TB testing and fingerprinting are two of those areas. But I think that's a really good place to start. What do you think, Angela and Lori, that I stopped there for a minute to see if there's any questions from the audience and from the participants?
Yes, we have a question from one of the audiences. The question is there a specific credential to counsel the athletes for athletics?
Usually, yes. Usually in athletics, it's usually a physical education credential. So there's if and a lot of the athletes, like at Burton High School and Galileo High School, there's a physical education credential. And so and a lot of them teach physical education, and then they're the athletic, they coach soccer or basketball, and they get paid extra for because it takes additional time. You have to travel with the team and things like that. But there is a very specific credential for physical education credential. And there's an adaptive physical education credential as well for students with learning disabilities. So that, some students that have different mobility issues or are visually impaired, then there's adaptive physical education as well. So there's two types of credentials. And I know sometimes they do hire coaches under special contracts that are not physical education teachers, and those are arranged through the administration of the school.
Thank you. I think Debbie wanted to ask some question directly. Let me give her the ability to unmute herself. Let me look for. Okay, Debbie, you should be able to unmute yourself and you can ask Dr. Isola directly your questions.
Thank you so much. Is there a way to like enable my audio? I mean my video so he can see me too?
Unfortunately, no. This is a webinar and
Oh,
video is not,
okay,
not allowed.
sorry, I've never been on one of those. Okay,
No
so
worries.
I'm very excited to meet you and be part of this. I have a lot in common with you, like teaching in all the same areas across the spectrums of, low income, high need, neurodiverse. I've taught in a lot of different capacities, like a regular classroom teacher, third grade mostly. And then in all the Title I schools, I was a reading specialist, a literary acceleration teacher, I'm sorry, I'm tongue-tied, but the reading intervention teacher for the lowest kids who are, like 2, 3 grade levels behind. And just due to like political reasons, I left the like normal classroom teaching and then became a private tutor. And like all along, I've been trying to figure out, okay, where else can I go? And I know that I don't want to be an administrator. And then I was thinking I would love to be like a school counselor, especially for like the younger ages, like K through 12 or something. And but then I found out that requires more credentialing and money, but I've already paid for my multiple subjects teaching credential, a master's in education with the focus on equity and social justice at San Francisco State, like you've mentioned. And so I don't really have more money to spend on another license or credential unless there's some sort of like major scholarship or grant fund. And I've just been like frozen, not knowing what to do because before the pandemic, I was doing fine just tutoring remotely, but I still have to do it remotely versus in person because of autoimmune issues, like with the fear of long COVID. I don't even care about short COVID, but but now it's like nobody wants online tutoring, so I've just been stuck for years. Like now what? Like I love teaching, especially now.
Well, I thank you for your, sharing some of your story with us, Debbie. And I think, it sounds like you've got a lot of skills and a lot of experience that could really benefit a lot of students. And so, one thing maybe you can consider is what they have extended learning programs, and that's beyond the regular school day, but like, say, at Sanchez School and at other schools, school gets out at 2 o'clock, but parents are still working. So the school day goes on from 2 o'clock to like 6 o'clock, and they have enrichment activities where students can be um, doing athletics, or they could have art, visual and performing arts. They could get their homework done. They have snacks, and they also could focus on literacy. And there's Governor Newsom, who has put a lot of money into extended learning opportunities. And I know there's several programs that have been approved. They're called extended learning programs. There's mission graduates, and there's other ones that have been approved by San Francisco Unified School District. And I serve on a board with Edmo. This is one that's providing extended learning services, not in San Francisco, but in Monterey County, in the Salinas Valley, in Marin County, in the Sacramento area. And so that could be a way to look at where it could be beyond the regular core academic day, and looking at where you could still do some important reading interventions or literacy work, and in an extended learning format. So that could be something for you to look at as well. And they're really looking for people in that area as well. So it's not having to come, every and they run summer programs as well. So it's not as being at the school at like 8 o'clock till 2 o'clock every day. It's a less format. And sometimes if you could look to see, I'm not sure what kind of work commitment you're looking for, but that could be an option. And they're always looking for people like with your skill set and with your experience to come in and to be able to provide those kinds of services. And so you might want to consider that, Debbie, as an option for your career, another career pathway for you to look at.
Dr. Isla, I'm not sure if you can hear me because it looked
Yes.
like
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay, so thank you very much for all of that. And I know when I was back in the SF, USD, and other school districts, that those kinds of after school enrichment things like homework club or whatever, the reason I haven't been interested in those is because they paid literally like $14 an hour. And as we know, that is a completely unlivable wage here in
Right.
the city.
Okay.
So,
That's the other consideration. Naturally, if you're a classroom teacher, then you're also getting health benefits, and the salary is higher. So there's give and takes of this kind of different career pathways. What you're pointing to is the economic compensation and health benefits that come from it, and sick leave and things like that. I'm just looking, for if there's other people who are maybe considering going into education, but you don't have the experience and the background that Debbie has. Looking at extended learning opportunities is really a good way to come into it. And if you're an artist, or if you're like, I hired some really good dancers. She was the queen for the carnival, and she was a great hip hop dancer, and the students loved her, and she was very good at teaching dance, and the parents really liked her as well, but very, very set in how she taught it. And Vanessa Mosqueda was her name, and she was the queen of the carnival. And so that's another opportunity. Or if you're really into the visual arts, or playing a musical instrument, sometimes those are enrichment activities, and extended learning opportunities are very good for that. And maybe if you really love it and you really like it, you're motivated to go back and get your teaching credential. And San Francisco State has a very good program. In fact, they're using my book, Transforming Sanchez School: Shared Leadership and Equity, at USF and San Francisco State, in the administrative credential program for those individuals who are pursuing their administrative credential. Because if you want to be an assistant principal or a principal or a central office administrator, you have to have a administrative credential. So it's there's those are different options to look at. But extended learning could be a way where you don't have to take on the full responsibility of being a classroom teacher or being a paraprofessional, because that's a more serious commitment. And like Debbie was pointing to, there's also economic benefits for taking on that more. And sometimes if you have a family or you've got other commitments in your life, you can't take that on. So I understand there's a balancing act in doing all of this as well. Lori and Angela, are there any more questions?
Debbie has another question. She wrote, could we go back to how much it costs for a counseling position, K through 12, or especially K through 8? How much it costs for a
A
counseling
counsel,
position?
well, if you want it, if you're interested in a counseling position, it's a pupil services credential. So that's a specialized credential that you have to have, like at the when I've been working at Burton and Balboa and Galileo, they typically start with a certain grade level, like ninth grade, and they follow the students through 12th grade to graduation. So that's kind of they get to know the students and the families and making sure they're earning enough credits to be able to meet the graduation requirements. I don't know what the salary is off the top of my head, but you could certainly look online at San Francisco Unified School District, look at the website, and I know they just settled a contract recently, so you could look and see what the salary is for people that are working in counseling. And you have to have a special credential, like I said, a pupil services credential for that. But I don't know what, but you can certainly look it up, and it's available.
Debbie, did Dr. Isola answer your question? You added the word like emotional.
Yeah,
You,
I mean, like, as I know, like when I went to high school, there were the guidance counselors kind of about, the courses you should take, onward to college, getting into college. But the kinds of schools I worked at and enjoy working at is the really rough schools where the kids are traumatized and it's like they can't even focus on the academics because their dad had a gun held to his head by his uncle last night, or their parents are in jail or on drugs. And I just I would love to work like in an elementary setting as the counselor, like the pull-out counselor, where the students during class go meet with the counselor. And so it's like emotional kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy, but with the purpose of enabling them to be able to feel safe enough or calm enough to actually focus on learning and academics. Like I and then I was thinking if I were to do this privately instead of within a school district, which I actually would prefer, like years ago I looked into like life coaching, like the coaching stuff, not life coaching, but like parent student, um, like coaching stuff like that. And so if there's something or some resources I can check out for all of that, particularly like doing that, but privately on my own with my own employer.
Yeah, there was a program that we had at Sanchez School. It was called it was the primary intervention program. It was sponsored by the California Department of Mental Health, and it was for kindergarten through third grade students that had been identified as having social and emotional needs by their teachers. And this was sponsored by Edgewood. Edgewood is one of the oldest programs in San Francisco and providing a lot of mental health services. It goes back to the time of the gold rush because there were a lot of orphans in San Francisco for a lot of different reasons, with people coming and going with saline and all kinds of stuff. So this was Edgewood goes back to that time of the 1850s, and it's still in existence. And we had a very strong relationship with them, and we had the primary intervention program, and it was for implementing non-directive play for 30 minutes a week, and there was a lot of evidence that showed the benefits of that and the relationships. And these counselors, these mental health counselors, did not have counseling credentials, but they had specializations in this non-directive play through the primary intervention program. And we saw so many benefits of that that when the California Department of Mental Health said we don't have the funding to continue it, Sanchez School was the only school in San Francisco that stood up and said, we're going to raise money to make sure that we could continue this program. And we did. And Edgewood was so impressed with that that the board of directors matched our funding, and we were able to continue the primary intervention program. It's called PIP, because we saw so many benefits that, the teachers are teachers, but they can't always be meeting those students' social and emotional needs. So students were pulled out for 30 minutes, and teachers really saw the benefits of that. Parents saw the benefits of that. And so I would encourage you looking at Edgewood, what's available there, and also through the primary intervention program through the California Department of Mental Health, because what you're pointing to, Debbie, is really true. We really look at the whole child, the social, emotional, physical, and academics of the person, because there's also the physical aspect of it as well. So going into health and school nurses is another aspect of it, because if a student is needing glasses and you're doing a vision testing to make sure that the student could be able to see properly and be able to read and write, all of that is very important. When I was a principal in Salinas at Lincoln Elementary School, Soledad Maximum Security Prison wasn't too far away. It was down in Soledad by Gonzales, and there were a lot of mothers that had their partner in Soledad Maximum Security, and a lot of students were going through a lot of different challenges because of the criminal activity that the husband had been involved with, and the upheaval of that. And a lot of the mothers were living in what they called limited housing. There were really motels that were set up as places for them to live, but not very good housing, and not really a kitchen in a motel. You don't really have that. They had burners and things like that, but they didn't really have stoves. And so it was really challenging circumstances. So I understand what you're talking about. But I've been very impressed with the counselors at the high school level, that they really embrace this idea of the whole child, and looking to see not only their academic performance and the credits that they're accruing to be able to graduate from high school, but involving the mothers and the whoever the caregivers are of the children. A lot of times it's grandparents, but trying to engage them and understanding social emotional needs, and physical needs that students are going through, and trying to be able to compensate for that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for depending on, the other is nutrition, because right now, because of a lot of different circumstances, food insecurity is really increasing. So looking at going into nutrition, and there's people that are working in food preparation programs, and in the cafeterias, and that. So there's different possibilities of jobs in education, and I think that's one of the and I think it's a really interesting time, and a really important time to consider this as a field to look at. And I was talking to Angela a little bit before. It's a little more stable than, sometimes technology could be really appealing, but then they're laying off people now, and that. And I think if you're already settled in San Francisco and you have a family here, or you have friends and you have housing, sometimes it's harder for people to come from other parts of of the country because housing's more expensive here. But if you're already in a place, or you're in a rent control, or you're living with friends, and there's a pretty good arrangement, and there is really a need, and there's a shortage of people going into education right now. There's a shortage of school administrators, of teachers, particularly in the science and special education areas. So there's a lot of opportunities to, um, and the health benefits are really good. There's really good health benefits. San Francisco is very generous in that, and that's a consideration as well. They have a good health plan for vision, hearing, um, all the health plan is very comprehensive. So I think that's something else that also the benefits that come, not only the monthly salary, but the health benefits that come from it.
Thank you, Dr. Isola. We have a question from another participant. The question is, if I want to volunteer to tutor or help young students, such as in math or English, but do not have any experience in tutoring or teaching, are there places or organization where I can gain those skills besides the extension education?
There's various programs. A program that we had, if you want to kind of wade into it slowly and see how it fits, we had what was called a Reading Partners program. And Reading Partners is you read one-on-one with a student, a half hour every week. And it was a really powerful program because what they do is they did an assessment, and looking at what the students, reading, and there's different levels of instruction, of reading levels for every student. They could be reading independently, which means they could pick up a book and read it and comprehend what they're reading. They're reading at an instructional level, which means that they need some support to maybe understand a vocabulary word or to read the full sentence. And then there's a frustration level, so where it's just too hard to really access the text. And so what we would do with the Reading Partners program, and there was somebody hired um, to do these reading assessments, they would prescribe leveled books at the student's instructional level. And then a reading partner would pull the student out of class and find a quiet place that they wanted to read together. And it was very gratifying for the reading partners and volunteers to come in and read. They would usually do it an hour a week, or if they wanted to do it 2 hours a week, and it would be for half-hour blocks of time with one-on-one. And I think that's really a nice way to wade into it because it's a very structured program. And then at the end of the session, every student gets to pick a book at their own instructional level that they get to take home and read. So it's also that they get a gift for participating in it. And I found that the Reading Partner volunteers, Sanchez School was the first school in San Francisco Unified School District to launch this program. And it was very successful. There were dentists that were retired. There were elderly people who entered into it. There were young people who just wanted to explore the possibilities of it. So people entered into it for different reasons. And we really did an assessment. And if you look at the book, Transforming Sanchez School, and you look up Reading Partners, you'll find that. And it's really, there's some really good research that points to students really benefit from it. And the reason why we were doing that was because we know that language and literacy is so important to one's academic success in school. And so we really had a great emphasis, and 60% of the students at Sanchez School were learning English as a second language. So we put a great emphasis on developing literacy skills for the students. And so I would look at Reading Partners. I'm not school. I knew there was a lot of schools after Sanchez School that came into it, and it's a very well structured program. That's one, but there's others as well that you could probably look at, but that's one that I know very well, and it's very well structured and highly successful, and it really values the volunteers' time to come in and it's very gratifying for the volunteers as well as the students. And naturally, the one-on-one time, there's a lot of relationship building that occurs with that.
Thank you, Dr. Isela. I see Judy raised her hand. I'll allow you to unmute in just a bit. I have another question that another participant added in the Q&A. So I'll ask the question from Lois first. Lois said, I'm curious about your stance on teleology in school. How could school best use these teleology, including Chromebooks and AI?
Well, that's a great question because yesterday when I was at Galileo, we had Chromebooks, and there's a lot of benefits that come with the Chromebooks, but there's a lot of challenges. Sometimes they weren't adequately charged yesterday. Some students didn't have their Chromebooks with them, and they're so dependent on that. And so I think there's naturally we it's the 21st century, and we're on technology right now, the many benefits of online meetings and all of that, but there's also some challenges with it. And with AI, I think we really need to have our instruction being able to not only regurgitate what we receive through AI, but we also need to be able to analyze it and see where does that fit into my reality, and so critical thinking skills about what we're receiving and not just regurgitating what we receive and not even thinking about it. And so I think the teaching has to really involve critical thinking about how does that square with my life experiences and my family's life experiences, and do I agree or disagree with it, and for what reasons? So that's where the teaching and the interaction comes in, and so not just accepting it as the truth, but analyzing it and looking at it. And that's the same for reading materials. This idea of critical pedagogy, that's the way. I really appreciated my working on my doctoral degree with the Jesuits at the University of San Francisco, because critical thinking is such an important aspect of that. How do we look at the world? How do we fit into the world? What are our life experiences? And that's from looking at reading materials, different sources of information, with AI being a source of information right now. But that's true across the board, teaching critical thinking and being able to use critical thinking skills.
Thank you so much. Judy, you should be able to unmute yourself now. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I was the one that asked about the tutoring, and you answered by talking about the reading program. I was wondering, are they still in existence, and do you get specific instructions or tutoring so that you know what you're doing when you're helping out?
Yeah, that's a good question, Judy, because I think it's important that you're feeling confident, and there's a certain amount of preparation for the tutoring. And I know if you're looking at going into an extended learning program, that they always provide professional learning opportunities. I was talking about mission graduates at being one where you're paid for that through if you're say tutoring from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, or you're providing homework support and tutoring in those sessions. There's also those opportunities. And then if you're doing something like volunteering through the Reading Partners program, because volunteering is a kind of a one-on-one opportunity. So there's kind of two different experiences there. And they also provide preparation for you to be a tutor, because in order for the students to benefit from the experience, naturally the tutors need to have some preparation and to feel confident in being able to provide those services. So yes, and if you know some people who are tutoring and what their experience has been, it's always good to talk to others who are. And usually I know the Reading Partners program firsthand, and I know they do a really good job with that. Mission Graduates is a very good program as well. That's an extended uh, everyday program, but it depends how much time you're interested in doing this. If it's maybe one day a week, I would look at Reading Partners. If you're looking kind of for some supplemental income and working 5 days a week, maybe 20 hours a week from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 o'clock, something like that, then it depends how much time you want to put into it as well. But I've always seen good quality programs providing professional development and preparation, and then follow-up support and coaching for tutors and for volunteers.
Okay. Have you heard about the program that's at the San Francisco Public Library, the Bridge? They were offering something similar to that.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that, but I know there's the San Francisco Public Library system has a volunteer program, a very active volunteer program. I know the one in North Beach on Columbus Avenue, and I see a lot of volunteers going in, and there's a lot of tutoring going on, but I'm not familiar. Maybe Lori or Angela could speak a little bit about the Bridge program and what kind of preparation there is for volunteers. Go.
Yeah, it's called FOC Readers. They're always looking for tutors, and I actually put the link in the chat a while ago. The tutor help students in grades 1 through 4 with reading, and the tutor will get an 8-hour tutor training to start. And I think we're asking tutor to commit to 2 hours a week. 1 hour of instruction and 1 hour of preparation for a minimum of 6 months. So yeah, they're asking people to commit for a minimum of 6 months and 2 hours a week. As far as I know, they're always looking for tutors, and there's a wait list of families, trying to get the kids match with the tutor. So if you want, take a look at the link that I put in the chat. There's more information on that webpage.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've been a big fan of the San Francisco Public Libraries. I visited a lot of the branches of the libraries close to the schools, over by Balboa High School, Burton High School, in Eureka Valley Library, the librarians, and very conducive environment, and for particularly after school, a lot of students going after school, and so that and the volunteers coming in. So, and they've renovated every public library in San Francisco. So there's a really nice setting and nice climate, human climate in there, and I see students really benefiting, and also adults that are contributing there as well. So I'm a big fan of connecting schools with libraries in San Francisco, and I think that's another real asset that we have here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Isola. I see that Debbie had some follow-up question. One is about Edgewood. Were the specialist license? What were the specialists licensed in? Is it counseling credential?
Can you frame that question again?
Yeah,
I'm
you know
sorry.
what? I'm gonna allow Debbie to unmute herself so she can ask the question.
Okay, hi, thank you. So it's like rewinding in the conversation to when you were talking about Edgewood and it, which I'm really very interested in. And you had said that for primary intervention program, I can look into the California Department of Mental Health, and that Edgewood I know is like a private company that does that. And I absolutely love like just everything they do. And that's exactly what I want to do. And you had said that like they don't need a counseling credential, but that they're specialists in some sort of play. And I didn't quite hear that word, like in
Oh, okay. I could,
play or something.
okay. Yeah, I could, that was because, if you wanted to be, say, a counselor, then you need a pupil services credential. And so that's usually 30 additional graduate units, which takes time, and there's also a cost associated with it. But what I was talking about, because of your interest in social emotional wellness, that it was a primary intervention program that was sponsored by Edgewood. And so Edgewood primary intervention program was they had a training in non-directive play, but they didn't have a counseling credential. So these were like paraprofessionals, and they were working with kindergarten through third grade students, a half hour in non-directive play, which was very evidence-based, and it was very had a really positive influence on the students that the teachers had identified had social emotional needs. And so that's kind of a niche that doesn't require a counseling credential or a therapist credential or a social worker credential, which is very specialized. But it is, and so that's one possibility. And looking at still being able to provide specialized services for students' social and emotional needs that doesn't really require a counseling credential, so or a
Yeah,
special therapist credential. So
that
there's
sounds perfect. But what's non-directive play?
non-directive play is an approach where the students are really kind of in charge of. You set up a sand area where the children are kind of directing, and you're just kind of guiding them through that. You could look it up online if you want, looking up non-directive play for mental health, and it's and you could learn more about it. And it's very, we stood up and we raised money because we saw such benefits at Sanchez School, and Edgewood, which is very highly regarded in San Francisco County and the state of California, really stood up for this as well. So you could look and look at that. It's a very evidence-based social emotional development program, and it was an opportunity for the children to kind of be in charge and empowering them and their agency to be able to have some control over their life and what they were doing. So it's kind of setting up a sandbox area where they're in charge of it, and it's very, and it's really, the adult is there supporting them, but not really. The children are playing and kind of revealing what they're doing, and it's gives them a sense of agency, because you think about, a lot of times children don't have the opportunity to make decisions for themselves. So it just gives them an opportunity in kind of a very controlled and safe setting to be able to carry out and make some decisions for themselves.
Thank you so much, Dr. Isola. The time now, it's 5:06. We're a few minutes over. But I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you so much, Dr. Isola, for sharing your time, experience, and insights with us this afternoon. Your dedication to education and to supporting diverse communities, it's truly inspiring. I also want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us today, and for you, thank you for your thoughtful participation. I hope that today's session encourages you to continue exploring opportunities in education and the important role you can play in your community. We'll be sending out a short survey along with the presentation recording, and we really appreciate your feedback to help improve future programs. Thank you all once again for being here. We hope to see you again soon at the library or at our upcoming events. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Lori and Angela, for your support, and all of the participants for your very thoughtful questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.